Okay, my friends, I am going to talk about Dr. Stephanie Seneff. She's a PhD, MIT, very knowledgeable, and she studies toxicity in the human body and molecular mechanisms, and she's going to be talking about glyphosate, which is in Roundup. And I was just doing some things, looking here and there. Now, this was 26 days ago. She's only had 136 people hit on this to see, but she is extremely accomplished. Now, I communicated with her. I can't remember whether we talked or email, whatever it was, but I feel very strongly that she was onto something. Now, this was before I really understood the interstitium and the enzymes and the bacteria and the fluid-filled highway to the degree that I understand it now. I was just getting an understanding on it. Now, she's talking about molecular mechanisms, and at the time I talked to her, I honestly really couldn't put it together in a way that I could present it and feel comfortable. So I sort of backed off it, but she was talking about a couple of things that were very, very, very controversial, and that's why she's really a blackballed, basically, I think. Okay, my friends, this is interesting. I am not a doctor. I am not even in this field whatsoever. I am a researcher, and I search the things that other people talk about, and then I put it together. Now, here's what I have found. Somebody commented on my channel about glyphosate and why are they spray it on right at the harvest time. And I said, no, that can't be true. And I looked it up. Sure enough, yes, farmers sometimes spray glyphosate on crops right before harvest to help with the harvest process. All right, the main ingredients in Roundup herbicide is used as a weed killer and drying agent on many crops, including wheat, barley, oats, beans, oilseed, rape, etc. Now, so they're spraying it on right before you eat it. So I dig a little deeper and I say, well, can it kill bacteria? And yes, absolutely. Yes, glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, can kill some bacteria. Now, glyphosate is a broad-spectrum herbicide. Broad spectrum means it kills a lot of things that are growing. It kills microorganisms, that's bacteria, including bacteria, fungi, protists. It works by disrupting the shinkmate pathway. So now, only those things have that pathway. We don't have that. Now it says it's a group of enzymes found in plant bacteria, which is that's what we need. We need plant bacteria to make our immune system work and everything else. Now, I don't know which ones it kills, and or if it's enough to kill, enough to harm us. I don't know. I'm not making any judgments. I'm just talking about the research. So don't forget now. This glyphosate is broad spectrum, kills microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, all that stuff. And it disrupts this shinkmate pathway, which is a group of enzymes found in plants, because it's killing the bacteria that would have made the enzyme. And important for manufacturing aromatic amino acids. All right? We work with amino acids. Since mammals don't have this pathway, the glyphosate isn't considered a threat to humans because it disrupts the pathway in these things. But what it does is it kills the bacteria. So I'm not worried about it killing us. I mean, I am, but I'm worried about it killing our bacteria, because that's what's going to kill us, because it kills the enzymes. All right, so remember this again. Mammals don't have that shinkmate pathway. So glyphosate isn't considered a threat to us because it can't disrupt our shinkmate pathway because we don't have one. However, some bacteria and fungi have forms of the enzyme that are sensitive to glyphosate, and the dose can also be a factor. So it kills the enzymes and the bacteria that, as far as I can see. Now, I would like to see some studies done. I would like to see some, different tests done, and even bacterial analysis of people that are eating stuff with glyphosate versus non-glyphosate. What's happening in their fecal stuff, and what is in their immune system? Is it affecting them? Do they need to take supplements to replace these bacteria that could possibly be damaged? I don't know. There is no database that I know of that exists that can quantify this and say these are the normal levels pretty much, and everybody's going to have a similar types of levels. Depends on where you live and what you eat and what your water supply is. They're going to be different, and that's also very, very interesting to figure out what is going to be causing these different variations. I mean, that's a study in itself, but they're going to be sort of a little wavy pattern, I would imagine. Now, if you're way down here or you're way up here, what is it that's way up here or way down there, and what does it cause? And I would imagine pretty quickly you'd be able to focus in on a lot of different causation factors and diseases. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but this is Stephanie Seneff. She's from MIT, and she works with toxicity in the environment. What causes damage to all these kids? They're all getting autism and things. And here she's talking about the CD estimates that 1 in 68 12-year-old children in the U.S. are on autism spectrum today. Now, overseas, it's much higher. In North Ireland, the people I've been working with over there, doing a study on gut, because basically it's the gut that causes a lot of these things, I believe. And again, I'm not giving any advice what to do or not to do. I'm a researcher, no. So there's 1 in 68 in the U.S., and the prevalence is growing exponentially. I mean, it's getting faster and faster. Now, an extension of the line on the log scale predicts that 1/4 of the children born in 2025 will be diagnosed, 1/4, 25%, with autism, and half the children 7 years later, so 50%. So, I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine that? And again, I worked with these people for 5 years. And the stories were devastating of the damage to their daily life and to how they feel about life and everything else. And the kids are trapped in this terrible, terrible condition. And I think there may be a fairly simple way out, and it's to repopulate the microbiome. And they're working on that right now, and it does look promising. But I think there should be a little more emphasis. Again, this is not my realm, and I'm just saying this is what the research indicates, that this is a focal point of interest that should be explored. And I would say quickly, if you had an autistic child, and there's a spectrum, I worked with Marguerite, and she's founded a gut study program over in Northern Ireland, and they're trying to get the government involved, and is doing a fabulous job. And all the people she's been helping have been helped. This is something you have to work with Marguerite. I don't get involved in that. I just do the research. Now, the thing is that these kids, if you see this, half of them eventually before long will have autism. And her son was so bad off when we first started about 5 years ago or so, that they were going to lock him up in basically a padded room. He was banging his head against the walls. He was jumping. He was screaming. He was humming. He was buzzing around, and he was getting violent and all kinds of things. He never spoke a word, and this was from the time he was like 3 or so. He just changed pretty quick, and boom. And I worked with her, because first thing I said to her, I said, how is his bowel movements? How is his poop? And she said, all the kids have autism, how'd she say it? She said, autism causes that. I said, no, that causes the autism in my mind. I said, let's see if we can get his poop straightened out and see what happens. And she sort of didn't really believe it, but she tried it, and yes, she got his poop straightened out, and he's he came back out pretty good. And there's a whole bunch of other ones. She's helped, apparently, the way she says, I believe, like 500 different families. Over there, they're actually taking their intestines out, thinking that, well, I don't know what they're thinking. I'm going to leave that alone because I don't know. All I can say is their kids are getting really, really a lot of autism and all kinds of childhood diseases that they never really should have had or should have, and they never had them in the past that I know of. Not like this. And they say, oh, they're just being able to diagnose them better. No, I don't think so. I think it's getting to a point where it's causing problems in the chemistry. And what starts the chemistry is the food, and it's the enzymes. If you don't have the enzymes, you can't break down the food. And if the enzymes only come from bacteria, that's the only place they come from. So I think it's important to take a real deep look at this pretty quickly. And again, Stephanie Seneff, I talked to her years ago. I don't remember whether I physically talked to her or we just went back and forth with emails. But she, you know, I agreed with perversely everything she was saying. And she was really being assaulted at that time. Now, I don't know how it's going for her now. It's been a long time since I had any contact with her. But I don't think she's probably being well received still, because once you're out, you're out. They don't normally turn around. Let's see what happens. Let me dig into this a little bit. Don't forget, some places they spray it on right before harvest to help with the harvesting the crop. It kills them and it kills all the things around it, and then it dries out. It's a desiccant. And that's when they put it on right at harvest sometimes to certain plants. And it's toxic on a broad spectrum, killing many microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, protists, and we eat that. Now, don't forget. So this is all got to be taken into consideration. I'm not saying it's good or bad. And now, so then I thought, how long does it last? Well, glyphosate, the active ingredient in Roundup, can remain in plant tissue for at least a year, and sometimes for more than a decade. So that's all pretty interesting. I thought was, you know, that didn't sound good if glyphosate is bad for you. Well, why does she say it's bad, and why do I think it? My reasoning behind it is if you ingest glyphosate, and it is a weed killer and a bactericide, it's going to kill the bacteria in you. You depend on the probiotics that live in you to do the things in life that make your body work. If you're eating something that's killing them, well, you got a problem. Now, does it do that? I don't know. Did they do the test? I don't know. Can we do the test? I think we can. How would we do the test? I know exactly how I would do them. All right, so I was in contact with Stephanie Seneff about a couple of different things that she thought were possibly causing this autism and so forth, because this is what's going to be about autism. Now, here's what I want you to see. This is before I really fully understood this layer, this interstitium layer. And now, they didn't even know about this. I published a paper about this layer in 2015, but by 2018 or so, I was pretty into this. I pretty well understood what was going on here to be the immune system. This is literally your immune system. Now, that is where all the bacteria and the enzymes live, is right in that fluid-filled highway. And they go all through your body, and they keep squirting out these ribosomes. Bacteria, single cell, one tiny cell. And it squirts out these little balls, and they're just like this. And they just keep popping them out, and they float anywhere they want to go in the body, and they collect inside of other cells. And you can have up to 1 million of these in one single cell. They're that small. So these are ribosomes. So now, what happens to a ribosome? After it wants to get used, because it's going to turn into an enzyme. So here's the ribosome. Little tiny thing, like I say, 1 million or even more than that, in one cell. Every cell in your body. So all of a sudden it gets triggered by a little thing on its surface. It'll say, "Oop, you're the guy," and the shell comes off the sheath, and it turns into a huge molecule like this, a huge enzyme. And that's why they can't get these big enzymes, which is what we use for drugs, up through the brain barrier into the cells of the brain. They're just too big. These can go right in. They just go right in there, and when they hit inside there, then they open up by themselves. But they're triggered. They're made by bacteria. We make them and squirt them in somebody, and they're too big to go through. They're doing a lot of research on that now with ultra, with sound waves, all kinds of things. But the deal is, these come out as these ribosomes. Let's go back and make sure I get carried away and start talking about things, and it gets confusing. So here we got the bacteria. It spits out the ribosomes, just squirts them out. And they float around, they go to wherever they want to go, and they collect in the cells, and then when they need to get used, they pop open into these. Enzymes break things when they click, and they don't even get used up. They just keep clicking around and breaking or doing whatever they want with proteins or carbohydrates or fats or whatever, mostly to break down food, but they also kill invaders. Proteins are different. Proteins are builder blocks. So that make this one here comes in and goes bam, 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 and kills everything. This one comes in and says, "Oh, you need some bone? No problem," and it makes some bone. Or you need some tendon, or you need some this or that. So this is like a building block. This is like a destroyer. And this is more realistic to what the protein looks like. It's just absolutely stunningly, exotically crazy, and it has to be exactly that way every single time. All these little spots have to be in the same place, otherwise it won't click. When it clicks, it's almost like an execution, electrocuting. Go click, but it first starts out like this. This can go through the blood-brain barrier to where it services your brain, so you don't die from something in your brain. And they know how to put drugs in there, apparently. They know the drug that's missing, but they can't get it through the blood-brain barrier because they're trying to put that in. It's just too big, it won't go. But a bacteria makes it like this, all set to go. It goes right in, just no problem at all. And it says, "Oh, I'm here, no problem." So you never get sick. This guy never had the bacteria to make the ribosomes, so he never gets it into his brain. You have to have these ribosomes. These are tiny, and they go in and they just sit in the cells and they wait to get activated. If you don't have them, it means you didn't have the bacteria to make them. All right, because I showed you that's what they do. That's their whole life thing, is to make these ribosomes. And if you don't have that bacteria, it was killed for whatever reason. I don't care what it is. And there's all kinds of toxicity, and that's what Stephanie Seneff is very good at. She understands this. Now, does she understand, and she knows what kills it, all right, but does she understand the effect with the enzymes and how that works with half-lives of particles? Because she's MIT. She's pretty up there. She should understand this stuff. So I want to talk back to her again, because now I think I have a whole new understanding of how the enzymes do the half-life with all the different atoms to make new particles, which require all of these different enzymes. So you have to have literally thousands and thousands and thousands of special enzymes. And if you miss a few, you're not going to be able to create the product that would have come out at the other end of all of this enzyme process. And when you eat something, it just doesn't turn into food. It has to be broken down by bacteria into little bits and pieces and then built back up again. That's exactly what they do. They make and break. All right, so if you kill them, you either not going to be able to break them or you're not going to be able to make them, one or the other. All right, plus they make you immune. You see this? The bacteria creates the same ribosome, but this time it's used in immunity instead of to break something down. And it programs a messenger RNA strand which goes in using an enzyme, polymerase, to break into the DNA to make you immune. That's how immunity works. This is just about bacteria and, just quick little doodle. All right, let's just start this off with Stephanie Seneff. Now, this is from Researched Elements, and Autism is Biomedical with Stephanie Seneff, PhD, Glyphosate Molecular Mechanisms. Now, this again, this is not me, this is her. She's a PhD. This is just technology, she's MIT. Now, let's hear what they have to say.
Welcome to today's episode at Autism is Biomedical. My name is Dr. Christian Bogner, and we have a truly exceptional guest with us today, Stephanie Seneff. Hello, Stephanie.
Hi, happy to be here.
Thank you for your time. I know you're busy in your work. Dr. Seneff embodies the spirit of a true scientist. She explores areas where others may not. She asks the uncomfortable questions, and she looks above and beyond to study how environmental toxins impact our health. Stephanie's groundbreaking research sheds light on complex interactions that many overlook. She's always been available for us to clarify concepts over the years. She always is ready to discuss mechanisms and proposals in regards to autism that I had over the years. And I think both of us were pretty close last year, I think, of writing a paper on a specific subject. Maybe that will still happen. But we are very honored to have you here with us today. And, especially wanted to thank you, especially for your invaluable contributions to science, for our understanding of a big puzzle piece. I think that many of us are not truly aware of yet of how it really works, and it's not simple when you read through the work that you have done. But historically, for those that don't know, I wanted to mention this because in other podcasts I don't think it's mentioned enough in regards to your credentials. You're a senior research scientist at MIT Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory. You received your Bachelor's of Science degree in Biophysics in 1968. You received a Master's of Science and other degrees in Electrical Engineering in the 80s, and your PhD degree in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science in 1985, all from MIT. And so for the last 3 decades, your research interests have always been at the intersection of biology and computation, developing a computational model for the human auditory system, understanding human language, so as to develop algorithms and systems for human-computer interactions, as well as applying natural language processing techniques to gene predictions. You have published over 170 articles on these subjects, and you have been invited to give keynote speeches at several international conferences, and you have supervised numerous master's and PhD theses at MIT. In the recent years, though, Dr. Seneff has focused her research interests back towards biology. She's concentrating mainly on the relationship between nutrition and health. Since 2011, she has published over 30 papers, together with colleagues, in various peer-reviewed medical and health-related journals and topics such as modern diseases, Alzheimer's, autism, cardiovascular diseases, analysis and search of databases of drug side effects using NLP techniques, and the impact of nutritional deficiencies and environmental toxins on human health. So Stephanie, we've known about you and your work in our community for at least for me, for over a decade now. I don't remember, but we have met on multiple occasions in person at different conferences. I remember a dinner with Dr. Mikovits and
Yes.
many years back. So you are a senior research scientist at MIT, and primarily you're known to most of us in the community for your research on the effects of glyphosate which is the active ingredient in Roundup on human health. You've authored several publications on this topic, notably your book, Toxic Legacy, How the Weed Killer Glyphosate is Destroying. Beautiful, and we'll post a link for that. How the Weed Killer Glyphosate is Destroying Our Health and the Environment. And you've also published various articles and studies exploring glyphosate's impact on biological systems and its potential links to various diseases. Your interest specifically, besides other diseases, is autism, however, and that's how I got to know you, meeting you at Autism 1, I think it was, the conference. And your research papers that you have written and published discuss glyphosate's role as an endocrine disruptor, its correlation with...
Okay, there we go. Endocrine disruptor. The endocrine is your secretions, your juices that are your enzymes, basically. So, endocrine disruptor, how does she define that relationship to why is it related to the organ not working, or is it related to not having the bacteria? I personally go with not the bacteria. Now, again, I haven't spoken to her. I go back probably 10 years ago talking to her about this. And she was very gracious. But it was very brief. And I wasn't 100% on board, I believe, as I recall. I can't remember now. And I still don't think I'm going to be, because she's talking about a chemical imbalance, I believe. Now, if she's talking about this endocrine issue being related to the bacteria not being able to produce the enzymes, now we're on the same page. But if she's talking about some other issue where it's attaching to some molecule, well, then I wouldn't go with that. I want to see some bacterial studies, basically, is my point. But let me look into what she has to say about it, and I'll come up with the relevant points. Okay, let's just let her roll with this, because they're talking about disrupting a sulfate. Now listen.
During this post-interview editing. But interestingly, you have explored how environmental toxins like glyphosate can disrupt sulfate homeostasis, potentially impacting specifically this molecule called heparan sulfate and related biological processes. And we wanted to focus somewhat on this topic today, the sulfation mechanisms. And we feel...
All right, hold on a second. Heparan sulfate. Let's take a quick look at that. Okay, this is all, again, it's all due to enzymes and so forth. Now, this heparan sulfate is a highly sulfated polysaccharide found in the extracellular matrix, that's all the fluids, in the plasma membrane, and intracellularly, just everywhere basically. It plays a key role in many biological functions, including, listen to this, growth factor signaling, cell adhesion, which leads to immunities, enzymatic catalyst, which makes everything break down the way it should, neurology, to keep your nerve cells surrounded and insulated, skeletal development, immunology, which I talked about a minute ago, tumor metastasis. It's what this is. This hydrogen, what is it? HS, heparan sulfate, is pretty important, sounds like to me, if it's all involved with this. Now, what creates this? What creates this heparan sulfate? Biosynthesis. So now we got to look into that. These are wormholes, yes, absolutely. All right, her claim is about glyphosate causing an issue in this pathway, impaired sulfation pathway, and glyphosate impaired this sulfur metabolism. But she goes on to talk about the phospho stuff. Everything with phospho relates to my world as a membrane. And now let me just show you a couple things about this. Hold on. Let's just listen to this part here.
The links to your publications and your book during this post-interview editing. But interestingly, you have explored how environmental toxins like glyphosate can disrupt sulfate homeostasis, potentially impacting specifically this molecule called heparan sulfate and related biological processes. And we wanted to focus somewhat on this topic today, the sulfation mechanisms. And we see a lot of benefits in the community, especially.
All right, so Dr. Seneff is focusing in a lot on this heparan sulfate biosynthesis. How does it work in the biology and synthesized in the biology? And what does it make, and how does it work within the cells and with enzymes and all the other things that are in the body that it has to work with? Now, it's she's looking at it as some kind of a chemical change to this molecule, but I see it more as it's killing the biology, as it's killing the bacteria, which kills the enzymes. Because everything, it all that talks about over and over about the enzymes and about the membranes, and all together, all three enzymes act on both this and that. So it's all about the breakdown of all the different enzymes to break these things down. Some of these things need a lot of work in the enzyme cycles, but they do it just instantly if the right stuff is there. If it's not there, it's not there. But the bacteria is what creates the enzymes. So I say it's in the half-life situation. And she's into all this kind of stuff. She should understand that. She's all about the chemistry, and yes, it is the chemistry, but you don't have the bacteria, you're not going to have the enzyme. Listen to what they have to say. They are just right on the edge of understanding this.
Connected. I didn't quite realize that it was a sulfotransferase. And then I just looked at it just before I got on with you, and I'm super excited about it because I think I need to dive into it. I think it's going to turn out to be a critical piece of the puzzle for the autistic kids. That is a sulfotransferase, and it detoxes the cyanide. Mm-hmm. And I suspect that it's getting suppressed by glyphosate. I haven't quite looked at it to see if it has.
See, she's into the chemistry again. She's saying this is going to detoxify the cyanide. Well, that's fine. Maybe that's what it is. But if you don't have the enzyme, and he's going to point it out, he's going to say, if you don't have the enzyme, it's not going to happen. And she still doesn't understand. I'm not pointing fingers or saying, this is a tricky subject, but I don't think she's picking up on the fact that it is the bacteria. Here goes.
Has that motif, but I'll bet it does. And I know how to find that out, but
Diasulfide is used in the ERs, right, for cyanide toxicity. But if this enzyme doesn't work, you won't break down the cyanide to thiocyanide. And it's, I think, very critical, not just for autism, but just in general.
I think so too. I think
for every disease that is chronic is because you don't have the correct chemistry. It's as simple as that. And 99% of them are invasion through membranes. So you got look. We need to make sure that fluid-filled highway of membrane, which they just now are even talking about, she may not even know about it, is where all of this bacteria and enzymes live, and they do all the chemistry in your body. It's a fluid-filled highway. They can move in and out of places instantaneously. But the only thing that creates any chemistry whatsoever in your body, it's not your pancreas, it's not your gallbladder, it's not your liver, it's not any of that stuff. It is the enzymes. The enzymes are created by the bacteria that live in those little factories. They're little factories, little shops. And they say, oh, make sure you got enough bacteria in there to do all the work. Those are the workers. You don't have those guys, it doesn't matter. Your gallbladder's just not going to do what it's supposed to do. You don't have the bacteria. You don't have the enzymes. He says, if you don't have the enzyme, nothing's going to happen. She says, yeah, you're right. Nothing will happen. Without the enzymes, you're done.
ERs, right, for cyanide toxicity. But if this enzyme doesn't work, you won't break down the cyanide to thiocyanide. And it's, I think, very critical, not just for autism, but just in general.
I think so too. I think you're onto something big, and we could write a paper on that. You and I could write a paper on that together. I suspect.
We should. Yes. In regards to, you mentioned in an email previously that you may have some recommendations, and maybe I've mentioned them already in previous interviews, but what can we do? We have the problem. It's too late for many of us. Our children are not speaking, they're autistic, they have this going on. What would you suggest we can do? Are there any natural remedies?
Well, certainly organic diet. And fortunately, in the United States, we do have an organic label. It's not bad. They can't use glyphosate. If they do, it's illegal. So you cannot use glyphosate on the organic crops. So unfortunately, it can still be there because it can be in the manure, for example. They don't have to have organic manure. And the cows eat a lot of glyphosate. So you can end up with glyphosate on the crop even though you're not using it. But generally, the organics test much lower and often negative on glyphosate compared to the other foods. And so eating certified organic, I think, will help a lot to reduce your glyphosate burden. If you suspect, like if you're living in a farming community, you want to make sure your water is not contaminated with glyphosate. You can test it. And if it is, you can install a reverse osmosis filter that can take it out. And I would recommend doing that. And so
those are particular bacteria in the microbiome that you have come across that are able to metabolize.
I mentioned the the molds and the Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Those are both not a good idea. So you would, I suspect some people actually have infections that are causing them a lot of trouble, and that if they take antibiotics, they kill off those bugs, and then they have a glyphosate problem. So you sort of are stuck. You're caught between a rock and a hard place, actually, when you have a situation like that. But there are also acetobacter. These are the only ones I know of that's pretty much my whole list of microbes. It's a tough molecule to break down. But acetobacter, some of the acetobacter species can break it down.
So you're basically suggesting also that the initial kill-off or the initial toxicity of glyphosate on bacteria like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, that suppression causes an overgrowth of bacteria, for example, Pseudomonas, which then
Yes.
if at glyphosate, it's much more potentiated than somebody would have a more balanced microbiome. Is that
Absolutely. Glyphosate's killing off the other guys. And in fact, another one is the cyanobacteria. The blue-green algae, they call them blue-green algae, but they're actually bacteria. Cyanobacteria are causing a lot of troubles in the Great Lakes,
Well, it sounds like they're onto it. They understand it. But what is the cure? All right, I just want you to understand. This is Marguerite O'Reilly. She's over in North Ireland. This is John Jr., her son, who had the most severe autism that they'd ever hardly seen. They wouldn't even take him into an autism study. He was so far off the spectrum. He had never spoken. He was a headbanger and screamer and shaker and every bad symptom you can possibly have. He had it. He never said a word in his life. And she contacted me, or I can't remember how we hooked up, but I think she contacted me because I had been talking about enzymes and bacteria, and I forget, it goes back quite a ways, 5-6 years now. And I said, the first thing I said to her, how does he poop? And she said, all autistic kids poop like terrible, and it's autism causes that. And I said, no, that causes the autism is in my mind. Let's try to see if we can get his gut straightened out. She did, and she got it straightened out not too long. It wasn't all that long. It was only about a month or so before she was starting to see some improvement. Now this is, again, I'm not a doctor. I don't give any medical advice. This is just a case study. A case study. Observational. words from the people that went through the test, really, to see if there's anything that can be done. And if it is gut related, is there any way we can replace the bacteria that create these enzymes? And it appears that yes, you can using probiotics to some degree. And again, no medical advice whatsoever here. But here was her experience. Okay, so this is Marguerite O'Reilly talking to me. I asked her, how's John doing? How's everything going? She sends this back to me. Now, she's the one that's doing the autism on Facebook. She said, and John Jr. was in terrible, terrible shape. They were going to put him in a locked, padded room for his whole life. He never spoke a word. He was just totally out of it, screaming, humming, biting, kicking, doing all kinds of crazy stuff, which is typical autism on the extreme end. And he was at that extreme end, and she was off the edge. Now, I don't exactly remember how we made contact, but I was posting about this and that, and she contacted me, I believe, and asked me what I thought. And the first thing I said to her was, how is his digestive system? And she said, oh, they're crazy, they get poop all over the place, and it's just nasty, and it's autism causes that. And I said, no, I think it's the other way around. And we proceeded with that to solve his digestive issues. And here's what happened. She says, Roger, John Jr. is fantastic, absolutely amazing. This is the kid that was out of it, totally gone. I can't believe the progress. I was thinking the other day, there was a time I thought I'd never hear my son talk or see him fall in love. My boy is a typical teenager. For that, I can never repay you. Trust me, repayment, forget about that. She's the one that did all the work, not me. I just made a couple of little recommendations. I dread to think what his future would be. Yes, I will try to get parents to share more once the workshop starts. She's starting a big project over there in Northern Ireland. She's going to be very, very important in this whole resolution of this issue. Now she says, Roger, how lucky I am. She saw her ex, she had something happened in her lung too, and she was scared, and she had it checked out, and she said her husband, Big John, also has carcinoid in his lung from last September. He has refused to have it removed. That's very small. He's using the probiotics in his CAT scan on Wednesday he's going to have. Now, at least he's using the protocol, which she created this protocol, and she's got a couple of little extra chemistries, and I have no idea, I didn't realize it, but she came up with a couple of, she went to Harvard for this gut issues, for primarily ribosomes, which are the key to enzymes. That's the key to enzymes. Ribosomes come out of bacteria. They create the enzymes. Now, she said she'd had to prefer her husband to have it removed, but whatever. So, Roger, praying you and your family are happy, la, la, la. I prayed and prayed to God as my mother died from lung cancer. Thank you so much. Everybody's got cancer. Everybody's got something. And as far as I'm concerned, a lot of it, well, I'm saying virtually 100% of these chronic illnesses and diseases are invasion through the membranes. And that only happens if you don't have the enzymes to protect you. That's why some people never get sick. They're fine, no problems. So other people, they get in the same environment, the same issues, everything the same, they're dead. That's the issue. All right, now let's get into the research.